Welcome to my Dungeons & Dragons video. This video is going to be made primarily for my players as a recap of the adventure that we've been playing for the past 7 months in the Faerie Tale Kingdom. The name of the campaign is The Land of Stories. And this is what I read to the players in the beginning of the game. This is from Elsa's perspective. You are sitting on the floor of your bedroom with your back against the door. You are scared and confused, but most of all, you are sad. Your sister is on the other side knocking, asking you to come out. She hasn't seen you in days, but you are afraid that you will hurt her, and you cannot tell her the reason why. Suddenly, you hear a strange noise coming from the wardrobe. At first, you think something heavy has fallen, a suitcase perhaps. But before you can check it, the wardrobe flies open and a man appears. He is bald with a long beard and robe, and he looks to be in a foul mood. He turns to you with a furrowed brow, a long stick extending from his fingertips. He is pointing it at you rather threateningly, but you don't know what it could be. "You there! Where am I?" He snatches you by the wrist, so hard that it hurts, and pulls you closer. At once you feel your insides turn to knots, and the room begins to spin, the colors blurring into an abstract smear. You are now standing in a dark place, the only light emanating from the stranger's stick. The ground at your feet is coarse. The walls are shapeless and rocky. The air is wet. I have been here many times, but can go no further. Here, do you see it? The angry man directs your gaze. There is a circle deep in the ground, a hatch with writing on it. 4 other circles surrounded, all with faces, bearded faces. Can you read it? What does it mean? You examine the writing on the hatch. It's been years since you've studied Dwarvish, but you managed to make out the words, hi-ho, sing we for and through we go. What does that mean? The man shouts, shaking you violently. His eyes have turned white, and he seems to be frothing at the mouth. I need to find the source. Do you understand me? It is here. The source is here. But with all my magic, I cannot get through this accursed door! Curse those dwarves! Shaking with fear, Elsa says nothing. Bah! You are useless! A schoolgirl sorcerer! There must be someone in this world with some real magic. He raises his stick and vanishes. You are left alone in the darkness, alone and shivering. So, on with the story. The second part that is scripted is called Kalima's Dream, and that is the female dwarf character that is played by my wife. And these are dreams that she's been having for a long time, even before this adventure started. Even when we're in other worlds, Kalima had dreams like this. So, this is her dream. It's burned into your mind, that wrinkled brow, that mushrooming nose, the pillow of a beard you snuggle with at night. Mostly feelings remain, the emotions that stir when you conjure that face. It made you feel warm and secure and loved. It made you feel like nothing bad could ever happen. He is bent over, sweat running from his nose, his ears black with soot. His eyes glisten, working feverishly, but you can't see what he is doing. Something is blocking your view, a barrier of some kind, just below your eyes. And then you hear it, the awful noise that haunts your sleep every night, a terrible squeaking. It gets louder and louder, and you are crying desperately now. Why doesn't he hear you? Why, oh why, doesn't he stop what he is doing to get you? No, he can't, because he's too busy. Because he has found something precious, something shiny. By the time he glances your way, you are moving. The face is getting smaller and smaller. You are afraid. your face awash in tears. He reaches, runs out to you, but it's too late. The shadows overtake him until there is darkness, only darkness. And that's her dream. So now, beginning with the official adventure, this is when the players started playing the game. Lilliea, Rose, Kalima, and Sekhmet, those are my 4 players, go through the portal at Stonehenge, and that's from the previous campaign, which was set in the Harry Potter universe. The heroes arrive in the spooky forest in the Faerie Tale Kingdom, where they meet Elsa, Ariel, and Kraktock. As they try and find their bearings, Kraktock, played by Fonda, my nephew, makes the mistake of picking a fight with 3 trolls guarding a bridge instead of answering their riddle. Kraktock is actually supposed to be the woodsman from the Little Red Riding Hood story. So if you're familiar with that story, Little Red Riding Hood was a little girl in a red cloak, and she was traveling on her way to her grandmother's house through the woods when she met the big bad wolf. And in the original fairy tale, the big bad wolf devours the grandmother and Little Red Riding Hood, actually disguises herself as the grandmother. The woodsman comes along, who is Little Red Riding Hood's father, sees a giant wolf, flies into a terrible rage, and kills the wolf to get revenge. And then he takes Little Red Riding Hood's cloak and he wears it kind of as a memory of her. And that's actually the source of his rage, is that red cloak. So if you're listening to this, Fonda, I doubt you are, but if you're listening to this, that's a little hint about something that might happen later in the game. So anyway, during the battle, Sekhmet loses consciousness, and Ariel, that's right, Ariel the Little Mermaid, is nearly drowned. What an irony. Kraktock calls upon a cord, which is a magical fey creature he had met earlier, for help. The cord makes a pact with him in return for destroying the trolls. They eventually find refuge in a small cottage with a lone dwarf. Dacus Doc Dolmir, one of the original 7, is the last of the dwarfs living in the spooky forest. He doesn't speak much, and he is always busy working on something called the Iron Dwarf. Moving on, we have Chapter 2, The Golden Maple. Later that night, Kraktock, Sekhmet, and Ariel, your scars are beginning to itch everywhere the trolls bit and clawed you. The skin is starting to bubble up, forming nasty, pus-filled blisters. Ariel seems to be in an even worse condition. You don't know if you'll be able to go out in this condition, but at least you can stay in the dwarf's cottage. You are thankful for Doc's hospitality, even if your legs stick out from the end of the bed. "Troll fever," says Doc. "Only one cure for that. You've got to find some tree sap from the golden boughs, enough to fill 2 vials. They're the biggest trees in the forest. They've great big golden leaves like a maple tree. Hurry now, the girl ain't got much time." To save Kraktock and Ariel, Lilliea, Rose, and Kalima go in search of the golden maple. And they ran across Alabaster, Snow White's daughter, along the way. They later find a life-sized gingerbread house, which turns out to be a decrepit shack under a powerful illusion. The old woman living there uses illusory treats to lure children inside so that she can eat them. But I guess the players didn't quite get the hint how evil this woman is and that she was eating kids. They just knew she was a witch. So they didn't try to kill her. Now, if Kraktock had been there, I think he definitely would have killed the witch, and that would have been a good moment for him to fly into a barbaric rage and kill someone, because the witch really deserved it. The trolls not so much. But he wasn't there, So basically the other characters, the other players, they just let the witch live. So the only thing they did is Sekhmet, being classic rogue, snuck into her house and stole some of her stuff, including the witch's tiara. But they left the witch alive. Later that day, the heroes battle a Trent, a scary tree with a face, to steal its sap to save Ariel and Kraktock's life. Kalima is taken by surprise and pummeled within 9 hit points, as Sekhmet keeps sneaking around to stab it, and Lilliea Grayton blasts it with a fireball. Finally, Alabaster shoots it with an arrow, and it starts to bleed sap. Dragon Rose then climbs up its back, holding on to the arrow for support. Only problem, she doesn't have an item to collect the sap. Seeing this, Sekhmet calls to Evermore, Rose's pet dragon. The dragon flies around the tree, dodging branches to deliver a vial. The sap is collected, Rose jumps down, and by morning they all find that the scary-looking tree was just a big maple. Not scary at all. Chapter 3, The Enchanted Glade. Sekhmet vanishes during the night from the dwarf's cottage. All the while, Doc, played by Zach, he's a friend of my older nephew Arthur, leads the party of Lilliea, Grayton, Rose, Kalima, Ariel, Elsa, Alabaster, and Kraktock through the spooky forest. And afterward, they reach the Enchanted Glade. The glade does not allow Kraktock to enter, sensing his propensity for violence. And this is when my nephew really went berserk, like in real life. He got really, really mad because all the players wanted to go to the Enchanted Glade because this was, if you look at the map, there's this little green area, this little green circle, basically, that's kind of along the road to Palace Town, which is where they're supposed to be going, which is where Snow White lives. And that's what I kind of expected everyone to do. But when they saw the green forest, they said, oh no, we have to go check that out. And I was kind of, as a DM, I was like, come on guys, how about you just kind of save that for later? And they're like, nope, we got to go check this out. So in the glade, they meet 3 unicorns. Rose manages to earn their trust, and they confide in her that a big hairy creature comes in the night to hunt them. That night, an ogre nearly kills Kraktock in his sleep. So I tried to get Kraktock in there. There was an ogre that was passing by outside of the glade, but he couldn't kill it on his own, so he almost died. Using a necklace of unicorn horns, the ogre penetrates the glade's magic barrier. So even though the ogre's evil, what had happened is he had managed to capture a unicorn outside the glade and kind of used the horn's magic as a key to get through the evil barrier. Lilliea Grayton creates an illusion to lure him toward an ambush, and Kalima finishes him off with her hammer, pulverizing his jawbone. Afterward, the unicorn tells Rose its secret name, Alkmaar, so that it may be summoned when called. And then at that point, my 2 kids fought for about 20 minutes over who this unicorn belongs to. Because technically, they had to roll charisma checks to see who would charm the unicorn. And it was my younger daughter, who plays Rose, who managed to technically get the unicorn to come over and talk to them. So my younger daughter was like, that unicorn should belong to me. But my older daughter, who plays Lilliea, she said, well, that's not fair because you already have a pet. My younger daughter has the pet dragon Evermore. It's a brass dragon. So she says, well, you can't have a brass dragon and a unicorn, and I have nothing. And I thought that was reasonable, and I really wanted to give the unicorn to my older daughter. That's essentially why I kind of put the unicorn in there, because I knew that my older daughter loves unicorns. So finally, in Palace Town, Doc meets with Bashful at his blacksmith's shop. They also find a dwarf named Tipsy in Tenkar's tavern. They convince Tipsy to help look for Grump if they can beat him in the game of Dragon Uno, which they do. Tipsy the dwarf then reveals himself to be Sneezy, admitting that Grump was probably out looking for his daughter, who disappeared over 20 years ago. On to chapter 4, which is called The Fairest One of All. Meanwhile, Sekhmet, you find yourself deep in the woods, and yet you don't know how you got there. The sky is gray, the trees lifeless, and a damp fog hangs over everything. You feel cold and wet and very afraid. Something tugs at you like an invisible hand, an icy hand. You reach a moss-covered shack deep in the bog. Much of the roof is torn, and it appears to be sinking in the muck. A haggard face greets you at the door. "Come in, my child. Come in." You recognize the hag immediately. She is hideous to look at, and yet she is welcoming. "I did not see it at first, the mark, but you have it. His mark is upon you." She touches your forehead with a knobby finger, causing you to convulse. "You have witnessed. Your eyes are open." Totally spellbound, you are powerless to move or speak. She leans into your ear, and her voice is like poison. "He is here." You follow the hag to the back of the shack, to a place enclosed by branches like a cocoon. There is a makeshift altar there, and you know sacrifices have been made here. You can almost hear the echoes of the tormented. "He does not ask much. Just a small token, really. A sign of your faith. An eye, a nose. Your finger, perhaps." She hands you a small knife. "Do it. When he is free, you will not regret it." Sekhmet is imprisoned and tortured by the green hag of the spooky forest. The heroes explore Palace Town, eventually getting invited to the Queen's Ball after making some pretty dresses. Queen White is seated upon a throne, resembling the bright plumage of a peacock's tail, each feather inlaid with many colored jewels and semi-precious stones. Her court attendants are in flowing gowns of pink and blue, with tall conical hats topped by long, sinuous ribbons. The queen looks to have aged since the time of her fairy tale portrait, but she is still beautiful. "It's just awful," she says. "First this terrible darkness comes and goes. Then the ground shakes and the wall starts sinking. Then one day my captain of the guard, Grump, just gets up and leaves his post without leaving a note or anything. Such bad manners. But if that weren't enough, my daughter Alabaster goes looking for him, and now she hasn't returned either. Whatever could be the matter, I don't know. We've all been living happily since as long as I can remember. I tried asking Mirror, but he's gone all funny, scaring me so bad I hid him up in the attic. Snow White leads them to the attic where the magic mirror is hidden. They go to ask about earthquakes and Grump's strange disappearance. The magic mirror is at the top of a very tall flight of stairs. Dust and cobwebs cover everything. Old paintings, royal families, having long passed, are completely obscured. Beds, chairs, and dinner tables of the finest workmanship are loosely stacked in corners. Candelabras, silverware, dishes. The ceiling is 30 feet above you, and the gears, sprockets, hands, and numbers of the back of the clock encompasses the entire wall. Opposite the clock face, hidden under a sheet, is a strange-looking mirror, its glass like dark water in the pitch of night. A single crack duplicates the queen's reflection. Two Snow Whites stare back at you now, as the queen undergoes a kind of trance. "Magic mirror on the wall, tell me, where has Grump gone?" "She is lost, my dear, as you soon will be," the reflection answers. "Why? Oh, why do you speak to me this way? Have I not been good to you?" Indeed, you are good and kind and pure of heart. But as long as there is evil, the Spirit of our Lord may live. Where great cruelty is met upon the pure, his seeds are planted deep in stone. The mirror reveals a shadowy reflection. The woman in the glass is a mockery, a sinister, twisted version of Snow White. She speaks with a demonic voice, and her eyes spill black with blood. And then the glass shatters, leaving a gaping darkness in the space that the mirror occupied. It is a darkness that envelops you, gripping your heart, drawing you into its mouth. It is at this point that Ariel and Snow White fail their saving throws and are sucked into what can best be described as a black hole. After that, the heroes meet Bast, who tells them that Sekhmet has been caught by the hag and is dying. Lilliea, Graydon, and Kalima ride the unicorn Alkmaar to the hag's hut, where they do battle with a gingerbread clay golem. This is a clay golem that is actually made to look like a gingerbread man under an illusion. Since Kalima had been attending the ball, she forgets to put on her armor and must fight in a dress. Because of this, she's almost killed. But Lilliea Graydon, with the help of Bast, manages to destroy the golem with a fireball. They are then attacked by a younger-looking witch, but the witch is beaten back before escaping into the woods. Sekhmet is rescued at last, but has been severely drained of blood. She looks about 30 years older now, and her constitution score is 9. Will she ever recover? Unable to find the green hag, the heroes journey with Sneezy into the abandoned diamond mine, where they kill monsters, narrowly avoid hazardous rockfalls, and gather materials for the Iron Dwarf. They at last come to a rock impeding passage to the lower levels. The rock turns alive, leaving a hole, and the heroes are forced to destroy it. Amid the rubble, Kalima finds a talking axe. The axe calls her by the name Fiora. They cannot descend further, as their rope is too short to reach the bottom of the hole. Now, this is another of Kalima's nightmares, which were sort of triggered by the things she saw in the mine. For some reason, these images have been haunting you. Since you entered the mine, your dreams have become more intense, more vivid, and you are beginning to suspect that they may be more than just dreams. It would explain your fear in the mine and your sense of déjà vu. An awful reality is dawning upon you, realizing that you've been in that place before, when you were younger, too young to form concrete memories. That awful squeaking noise from your nightmares, the sound that wakes you in the middle of the night, is the turning of iron wheels inside an iron groove. The dwarf's cart did more than carry ore and diamonds. It also carried you. This was your crib. Chapter 6. There's no place like home. Kraktock, my nephew, finally comes back to play. You've been drinking your sorrows away for weeks now, forgetting all about your deadly encounter with the bridge trolls, along with your newfound friends. Even Elsa, who seemed to have taken a liking to you at first, has run off in a huff. As always, your mind returns to wolves and to the loss of Little Red. You feel a gush of cold, and a few stray flecks come in through the doorway as Joe the farmer stumbles into the tavern, a look of horror on his face. "Torn to pieces," you hear him mumble. "Never seen anything like it. My cows, my pigs, torn to pieces." A knock at the door, a gathering of dwarfs. Days after you return from the diamond mine, there's a knock at the door to Doc's cottage. He opens it to find Bashful. He is joined by dozens of other dwarfs. They are pouring in from all directions, descending upon the tiny abode. Bashful unravels a large spool of parchment marked with designs for what looks like a kind of dwarven plate armor. You overhear them speaking in hushed tones at first, and then it grows into a heated argument. 3 others have joined in the debate. They go by Grumbly, Stumpy, and Lumpy. Stumpy is short even for a dwarf at just 3 feet tall. Lumpy's gut spills over the sides of his belt, which barely looks to hold up his pants. Grumbly has a worthy face and a shaggy walrus mustache. At some point, Grumbly shouts, "Green Mithril!" Doc shakes his head disapprovingly. Dozens more arrive. They are laying down tracks. A wagon appears pulled by enormous goats laden with wooden beams, canteens, lanterns, picks, and a mining cart. Then you see it. Bashful's cart covered by a tarp. When the wind blows, you catch a glimpse of something shiny. It looks like a glove. A tremendous glove, bigger than a dwarf. As Sekhmet stays behind to help the dwarfs, Kraktock joins Lilliea, Rose, and Kalima to discover the secret gnome village, Nowhere Special. There they meet April, a young female gnome. They also buy beans from a magic store. That's kind of important, players, if you're listening. And find clues as to the whereabouts of the big bad wolf. Jumping into a magic pool, the heroes end up in the spooky forest, where Kraktock confronts and kills the giant wolf. But not before April is horrifically devoured. Having purchased winter coats and Nowhere Special, Lilliea, Rose, Kalima, and Sekhmet journey into the snowy Forbidden Mountains, where they kill a yeti and free a young girl who had been frozen in a block of ice. The girl leads them to a hut, which has been made via illusion to look like a ruin. The 2 witches living inside had been preparing to dine on her younger brother. After a prolonged fight, the heroes destroy the witch's ice elemental and the ice hag who summoned it. Sekhmet also frees herself of the curse by slaying the witch's sister, the Green Hag. So the Green Hag is finally found and killed. Chapter 8. Enter the Sunless Citadel. Kraktock arrives in time to stop the 3rd hag, sister, from throwing Sekhmet from a cliff. Sekhmet actually woke up and she was in her sleeping bag to see that Kalima was dragging her through the snow to throw her off the cliff. And again, you know, these witches, they love to use illusions. That's their primary thing. So my player didn't quite know what to do. Should she attack Kalima? But it turned out that Kalima wasn't Kalima. She was actually the 3rd witch in disguise. But Sekhmet managed to free herself from the sleeping bag. And then Kraktock showed up and helped to kill her. So good he showed up. But finally, they go through this dungeon. And they finally found Grumpy locked in a cell. And this is Grumpy's story. "Well, if you must know, this whole bleeding mess is my fault. And now you adults coming here making things worse. Thanks a lot. It all started years ago, about 30-odd years, I reckon. I was in the mine digging up diamonds. Was no trick to getting rich quick. Then the missus went and had us a girl. One day she tells me to watch over the wee one, and so I does. Set her up all nice and neat in the cart with blankets and all. Made a bassinet out of it. No harm would come to the lass. I made sure of that. Then I go and spots it. Biggest blasted gem you ever did see. Wish I hadn't. I lay awake at night still wishing I'd never seen it. I was so busy digging it out that I didn't even hear her wailing, calling out to me. Was like some devil had me ears. When I finally looked, the cart was just gone. Just rolled away. I blew my horn, called every dwarf in the mine. We went looking. Couldn't find nothing. Not the cart, nothing. Cursed the day I ever laid eyes upon that gem. 10 long years I kept at it, even when the other dwarfs had quit. I couldn't. I wouldn't. Then I come to this well. It was like a door. I didn't know where it comes from, but I sensed it didn't belong. Not in the mine, not in this world. But I tore it open, certain I'd find her behind it. It was a long way down, so I called my brothers. We were 7, and we went down and down deeper into the ground than any dwarf had ever been. That's when I understood what I'd really found all them years ago. It hadn't been a gem. I'd not even bothered to dig it out after losing my girl. Didn't want it. But the gem, see, was just the tip of something bigger. A crystal the size of a house. No, 2 houses. And there was something moving inside that scared the pants off us. We went running, scared out of our wits. Things were chasing us. Can't tell you what. It was too dark. We weren't looking back. 7 went in and 4 came out. Don't be happy, sleepy, dead 'cause of me. So we sealed it up good. 20 years, and I thought the whole thing was over. Then I go and do something stupid again. They should really call me Stupid the Dwarf. This wizard comes to me with a long beard and everything. Says he needs to get through this dwarf seal. I tells him no way, no how. But he shows me this glass, and in it I sees my girl. She's alive, he says, and he can point me the way. All I has to do is tell him how to open it. And so I goes and tells him. Just like that. And he says, I'd meet my daughter here. Go to the Forbidden Castle and you'll see her. Knew her name and everything. Fiora. That's right. Kalima's real name is Fiora. Chapter 9, Queen of the Underdark. Kraktock retires for drinks at the Dragon's Flagon as the heroes continue to the Forbidden Fortress in search of Grumpy's godchild, Alabaster. Because remember, Alabaster had also gone looking for Grumpy. Along the way, they kill a young gray dragon. Then they get to the final room of the dungeon, or one of the final rooms. Dark violet clouds swirl above ancient crumbling columns, the ceiling they once supported long torn away. You can scarcely imagine how the place might have looked when it was built. A flight of steps leads to a dais, where a dark-robed woman draws your gaze. And in the center of it all, a solitary cage hangs from a chain. You recognize Alabaster at once, who has been forced to squat inside the cage. She does not look well. The dark-robed woman descends from the dais with an air of queenly grace. A raven sits atop her shoulder, and a decorative chalice swirls in her palm. Despite her sinister appearance, she is stunningly, disarmingly beautiful. Do you like my trophy? She is so innocent, so sickly sweet, like a single rose growing in a thorn bush. But she will learn life is misery. The years will strip away her illusions, and when all her faith and happily ever afters are gone, I will send her back to her mother, a new woman. And of course, this is Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty. Grumpy threatens Maleficent so that she releases Alabaster. Sekhmet tosses the scales of the young grey dragon onto the ground. In seeing this, Maleficent flies into a rage, revealing her true self, that of a black dragon. Of course, the young grey dragon was her child. The battle nearly takes the life of Lilliea and Rose. Kalima delivers the killing blow. As Maleficent is dying, she remarks, "There is something wrong in this world. You must have felt it. Where's your happily ever afters? This is not how the story ends, how it's supposed to end, and yet here we are. It's all been changed, don't you see? All the stories have been changed, and it's her fault." She points then dramatically to Lilliea. "Yours and that key of yours. You've opened doors that should not have been opened, and now we are living in it, in the mess she's made." Chapter 10, Snow White and the 700 Dwarfs. You reach a small cottage on the edge of town, similar in many ways to Doc's house in the spooky forest. There is a straw roof, a pile of chopped wood along one wall, and several grazing chickens. Just over the chimney, facing east, you glimpse the spires of Snow White's castle. A plump-looking dwarf is standing by the entryway with a broom in her hand. She is sweeping the steps and does not notice you. Grump clears his throat. When she looks, you find a familiar face. You can remember those ruddy cheeks, her broad smile. "Regina!" he says, barely above a whisper. She stares at him, at you. He removes his hat. "Regina?" The dwarf woman drops her broom as her legs give out. Grump catches her before she hits the ground. "Regina, it's Fiora." The dwarf woman knows. Somehow she knows. Her face fills with tears. And then Grump says, "I brought you here for good reason, Fiora. I can't let you go down into that mine. You're a good fighter, maybe the best of us. But that's where I lost you, and I can't bear to lose you again. Understand? For my sake and your mama's, you gotta stay here." I guess it's possible that my wife could have decided not to go into the mine. She could have said, "Hey, you know what? I'm just going to stay here with my mom." I highly doubted that would happen. But if she really didn't want to do that, then I was just going to have my wife play as Grump and just roll Grump's attacks. So after that, the players, they get some potions and they go into the diamond mine and they do a number of things. They have to go into this hole. They use a magic bean that they got from a store inspired by Jack and the Beanstalk. They throw this bean down into the hole. The bean grows, and all the dwarfs climb down, and they go into the second level where they fight a gelatinous cube, and they also come across a purple worm, which had become a giant worm because it is feeding from the runoff from the mine. Thankfully, my daughter Lilliea, who plays a wizard, used her polymorph spell to turn the purple worm back into a regular size worm, and there they find Dopey's remains, and it's a hat, and inside Dopey's hat they find a little picture of Snow White with a little lipstick on it in the shape of a kiss. So just something that Dopey used to carry around with him. So and here's a little dialogue. Achaia says, "Oh, I didn't want to come here. No happily ever afters here. Never will be. Not for them." Doc pats him on the shoulder. "Don't you worry, Sneezy. We'll make it right somehow. That's why we're here, ain't it?" "Suppose you're right, Doc." Anachaeus pulls an enormous handkerchief from under his armor. His nose sounds like a trumpet as he blows into it. "Well, what a bunch of sourpusses we're turning out to be," Grump cuts in. "No point standing around here crying over what can't be changed. Let's get going." And then finally the characters get to the bottom of the mine. And so it reads, "As you reach the base of the spiraling ramp, you are surprised by the melody echoing up from the depths. It sounds distinctly like dwarf song. And there you see a remarkable sight. 4 other dwarfs identical to the ones in your company. Grumpy, Sneezy, Bashful, and Doc. They are all holding hands and singing, 'Hi-ho, hi-ho, sing we 4 and through we go.'" And so basically this turns out to be an illusion that was created by Salazar, because the only way to get through this dwarf seal, this is the seal that the dwarfs made to prevent the evil from escaping from below the second level of the mine, they created this seal, and the only way to break the seal was if all 4 dwarfs, the 4 surviving dwarfs, stood on these platforms and sang this song. And since Salazar, he didn't even bother capturing the dwarfs, he just made illusions of dwarfs, had the illusions sing, and that kind of tricked the seal into opening. So basically Doc says, that seal was unbreakable. You could even say it was impregnable, Bashnar adds. No way in or out, Sneezy concludes. We made sure of that. The wizard knew the way, Grump replies, because I told him so. He didn't even need us. But what does he want with what's down there? Doc remarks. Can't be anything good, Grump grumbles. You know them wizards, not a good apple among them. Well, he turned to Lilliea, red-faced. Present company being the exception, of course. Okay, so then what happens is the dwarfs find that there's a giant cauldron which was used to pull lava up from beneath the mine, and they all get into it and they winch it down, and they go down into a very vast dark area that has rivers of lava. Okay, and Bash says, I'm scared, Doc. I know, Doc answers. Me too. Me 3, says Sneezy. Maybe you ought to call up the you-know-what, Grump remarks. No sense in that, Doc replies. Tills we know what we're up against. After all, I'm not sure how long it'll work, or if it'll work at all. And the you-know-what is in reference to the Iron Dwarf. And up to this point, the players don't know what the Iron Dwarf is. They suspect they know, but they don't really know. So, and then finally they find the remains of the other 2 dead dwarfs, and it's Sleepy and Happy. And Doc finds them, and he says, "We never bothered looking back. We were being chased," Sneezy tells him. Grumpy crosses his arms, his face a mix of anger and horror. I guess I have to be the one who says it. Dopey, Happy, and Sleepy, they weren't killed by no monster. What are you saying, Grump? Says Doc. I'm saying they killed each other. Something spooked them, and they went all funny in the head. So they move. So the players explore this area filled with lava, and they come to a dwarf who is pulling pushing a wheelbarrow, and the wheelbarrow is full of these white crystals. And Doc recognizes him as a dwarf named Grumbly, and Doc says, "Grumbly, what's going on here? What are you on about?" But Grumbly ignores them, and he says, "The master, got to dig for the master, free the master." So the players try to wrestle Grumbly and take the wheelbarrow away from him, and Grumbly kind of runs into the lava, and he kind of falls into it and burns to death. And so then the players and the dwarfs, they have to hop over the lava, and they get to another area. This is where the final showdown takes place. So the smoke and floating embers dissipate. Magical balls of blue-white light drift all around you, will-o-wisps, giving shape to the cavernous space ahead. Dwarfs by the hundreds are moving to and fro with picks and shovels and wheelbarrows. They have the same solemn features, the same ashen skin, the same dead eyes. They are consumed by the white crystal, breaking it into smaller pieces, piling and tossing it by the barrel fill into pits of fire. "There!" cries Grump. "There it is!" A solitary white crystal dominates the cavern. All the workers are focused on it. They appear to be breaking it apart, trying to dig out something. Directing the dwarfs is a wizard in green and black. He has a long white beard and wand, and a silver key hangs from his waist. He is accompanied by a girl in white and an enormous brute, what looks like an ogre mated with a frog. There is a full-body mirror also, like the one in Snow White's tower. So, of course, this is Salazar Slytherin, and basically Salazar, when he sees the heroes, he points to the dwarfs. There's hundreds of dwarfs that are working to break down this giant crystal, and he commands all the dwarfs to attack the heroes. And what happens is Grump takes out his horn. He has a horn of dwarf summoning, and he blows in it. And in that moment, he starts to sing the song Diggy Diggy Hole. And you can look up this song on YouTube. It's absolutely fantastic. It's basically like a dwarf anthem. And when you listen to it, it just makes you want to fall in love with dwarfs, and really convinces you that dwarfs are the best race. So this was an inspiring moment. I played the song for the players, and after that, the dwarfs, the spell that Salazar had over the dwarfs was broken. So every dwarf turns to the wizard, their faces black with soot, their eyes red with rage. They merge into a wave, picks and shovels in their fists, and then a fireball erupts in their midst. The dwarfs scatter. Those in the center are scorched, falling in flames, burnt to ash. Basically, Salazar hit them with a fireball. And then Doc cries, "Maybe now's a good time for the you-know-what." "Not yet," Grump shouts. "We can handle them." And this is when the big fight starts. And it's basically Salazar, Elsa, who has also been brainwashed, Elsa from Frozen, and a big demon monster. It's actually a Hezrau from the Monster Manual. So it's all the player characters, the NPC dwarfs, fighting Salazar, who's a 20th level warlock, and Elsa and Hezrau. So they have a big battle, and during the battle, Salazar is struck, and he loses his concentration, and Elsa's freed, so then Elsa kind of wanders off. The Hezrau is killed, and there's also a mirror, a magic mirror similar to the one that Snow White had, and they can see that there's something trapped in the mirror. Salazar Slytherin is defeated, and he has very few hit points. He only has like 10 hit points left. And he turns to the giant crystal and he says, "It does not matter what happens here, what happens to me. We are all doomed, don't you see? We were doomed from the start. Our only choice was whether to serve or be destroyed. I chose the former." Salazar turns from you and raises his wand. Something stirs in the crystal. An enormous silhouette, very much alive. Lightning arcs from the wand. The crystal begins to crack, each crack filling with light. "Master! Master! Master! Master!" Salazar is both screaming and weeping with joy. He is in ecstasy, a madman delighted. Where the crystal tower once stood, something green and scaly unravels. A tendril curls about the wizard's body, snatches him up. "Yes! Take me, my master! I am yours!" Salazar goes head first into its mouth. Teeth grind him to bloody pieces. And at this point, I take the crystal off of the table. This was a cool salt crystal lamp that I bought from a rock store in the mall that lit up. And I took it off the table, and I went and I got my Demogorgon miniature, which isn't such a miniature. This is a pretty big figure. I dropped it on the table, and you should see the expression on the players' faces. They were like, "Oh, crap." Like, they're like, "What do we do?" And the problem is that the players were already pretty weak from fighting the Hezrau and Salazar. He had actually took him down quite a bit. And the first thing I have the players do is they all have to make saving throws, wisdom saving throws. Just by looking at Demogorgon, they have to make wisdom saving throws. And the save DC is 23, which is insane. So most of the players have to roll a 20 just to save against this. I rolled a D4 and they lost. They took wisdom damage from just being in Demogorgon's presence. Kalima, who is played by my wife, she was sort of hypnotized and just kind of wandered off. She couldn't even fight. She just kind of went away. And the other dwarfs tried to hit Demogorgon. Most of them couldn't even hit him, couldn't even harm him. And Demogorgon attacked them and very quickly just dispatched the dwarfs. Grump goes down to 0 hit points. Sneezy goes down to 0 hit points. Bashful goes down to 0 hit points. Kalima's wandering away in the daze. Sekhmet goes down to 0 hit points. Lillia's really weak. My daughter, my youngest daughter, she's 7. She plays a monk named Dragon Rose, and she was scared like in real life. She actually went up to me and said, "Daddy, why did you do this to my imagination?" So she's really scared, and she actually goes and sits on my wife's lap, and she won't bring her character anywhere near Demogorgon. She just literally just runs away. So at this point, it really looks like it's going to be a party kill, but I intentionally pull a Deus Ex Machina. So this is when the Iron Dwarf shows up finally, and the Iron Dwarf is basically a Jaeger, like a medieval Jaeger, like a steam powered, and Doc is sitting inside of his head, and he's driving this thing. Demogorgon, he takes a few blows from this huge axe, this giant axe, and Demogorgon's tentacles are wrapping around the Iron Dwarf, and it really doesn't look like the Iron Dwarf can easily kill Demogorgon. It looks like it's a good fight. More craziness happens. Sekhmet realizes that she needs to break the magic mirror, and she breaks the magic mirror, and Snow White and Ariel show up because they had been sucked into the mirror earlier. And Snow White actually has a magic wand, and I used a Sailor Moon wand that my daughter got for Christmas. I use this as a replica. So is this exactly the same wand that Sailor Moon has, or is it similar? I don't know. But basically, this wand has the power to mass heal. It has mass cure critical wounds, and it also has raise dead. So she basically brings the dwarfs back to life, and the dwarfs are able to make a run for it as the Iron Dwarf is fighting Demogorgon. So as they're running away, there is lava starts ripping through the ground, and stalactites start falling, and all they can do is run. And Lilliea retrieves the DM's key from Salazar Slytherin because he got killed, and they find a doorway, and the doorway leads to different worlds, and one of the worlds is Middle Earth, and they see the symbol. It's J.R. Tolkien's initials, and they see the symbol, and they decide they're going to run through this portal. And at that moment, Grump turns to his daughter Kalima, and he says, "You can't be staying, and I can't be leaving, no matter how bad it hurts. I'm seeing you've got another family now, and they need you more than me and your mom. Still, ain't all bad. I'm thankful to have seen my wee precious again. Couldn't be prouder of the woman she's become. I love you, Fiora. Always will. Hurry along now." And in the epilogue, you see from the perspective of a little boy, a little 8-year-old boy named Otto, and his grandmother is Alabaster White, who was the daughter of Snow White. So many years have passed, and Otto is excited to go swimming, and he's kind of like, "Come on, Grandma, let's go." And he kind of stops, and he notices for the first time that there's a huge statue of a dwarf in front of the palace. And he looks up and he says, "Grandma Alabaster, who is that?" And Alabaster explains that that's a statue of Docus Dolbear. And she basically tells him that Doc died saving the kingdom. And so basically, the story is that Doc did not, he basically fought Demogorgon until he was killed, but Demogorgon did not escape out into the Faerie Tale Kingdom to destroy the kingdom. The kingdom was saved, but Doc lost his life in the process. So I just felt it was important to have closure. And I also reveal that Grump and Achaeus Chew, who was Sneezy, and Bashful, who was called Bashnar, that they lived to a great old age. They lived another 100 years, and they had many, many children, and they became the dominant tribes of dwarf in the Faerie Tale Kingdom. So that's basically the end of the Faerie Tale Kingdom campaign. And will Demogorgon return? I don't know. But I loved having the opportunity to use my favorite monster again in D&D, and even if it wasn't really to destroy him, just to whip out that monster and put him on the table and see the players' expressions, and knowing that they're just so far out of their league, they're confronted with something they can't possibly hope to defeat. I think that was really exciting for me and for everybody. So that's it, and thanks for listening.